Okay, so we're going to start the next part of the poem here. So we've read through the poem, we've talked a little bit about meter and some of his abilities to control what he's trying to do. As always, we kind of look at the poem and see what it's giving us. I see really specific, stanzas here. Here's a stanza. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. Same thing here. 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same thing here. I see that like in the first one and the third stanza, he's playing with lines. So that seems to be like, he wants me to see that there are moments when the line can't hold itself, so it kind of falls down. So I wonder if there's something heavy here, right? And maybe also here. So I can think about that. And then I have again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and yet again another break. So out of the opening few stanzas here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 stanzas, three of which have the same basic break, and all of them being the same amount of lines. And then I have the final stanza. And again, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, followed by one. All right, here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5. And this one is broken again. So there's a real sense here of like culmination. So 5, 5, 5, 5, 10. Pretty short poem, but very much about control, right? Control with some variation, which is here. So, these kinds of observations are more about, what may this have to do with the actual poem, and what he's trying to say, as we go through it and try to understand the meaning behind the poem. And he tells us from the top that the poem is a big deal poem, which they all are. He says that so love is our first word. So love calls us, so love calls. So this idea that love is the thing out there that has a voice. Love calls us to the things of this world. So there's a bunch in this particular title. I won't spend too much time on it, but we could analyze this for quite a while. The fact that it's here, love calls us, so it's not us that calls love. So not that so in other words, love doesn't just exist inside of our own consciousness. It's as if love dictates our consciousness, right? Love, some other entity outside of our realm, is telling us what to do, which might be like what we might call Cartesian metaphysics. There is something grander than ourselves that exists that tells us how to feel. And then things, right? So very, very generalized here. Then to this connection, this world, which is interesting, right? Because if you take this out, love calls us to the things of the world, right? That's fine. We'd be like, yeah, that's the world. But he's clarifying that there's a this world, which means if there's a this world, there's a that, right? If you can get with this, you can get with that, to keep to our hip hop theme. So it's interesting, right? We have like love calls us and things, and then this and that world. I mean, it's very much, if you change this to the name of for God or something, if you wanted to, and you follow it up with this idea here, this world, it very much seems to suggest a kind of higher power, higher calling. And of course, the poem is very much playing with language, and I'm highlighting it now, even in the opening stanza, that is all about, personal joy. So it's all about religion here, but not religion in like the sense of there are certain rules that must be followed, but more about like this aspect of religion, which is about, of course, love, that we've been called to love in the world, and that's our highest thing. Thing is a very specific word. Sorry. It's getting late again. So I'm going to read, this opening stanza and see what we can discover about the poem. So he tells me, the eyes open to a cry of pulleys. So, here is a literal thing, but it's using a metaphorical word, an image of crying. So crying, of course, is an emotional concept, a thing that has a number of different connections to it. To cry, quite specifically, is to, right, to feel an emotion so powerful the body kind of like breaks down and cries. So it's not necessarily a sad motion. I might say that it's a cathartic one. Like crying feels good. It's a good thing, but it's connected to this idea, to this very specific image, not an idea, of pulleys. So this is an older poem, like I think 1956. That might not be the right year, but basically what's happening is And we learn it here, and we'll learn it here more, is that the poem is dealing with laundry, and it's dealing with laundry that's being put out on a clothesline. And the only way to put it out on a clothesline is to use pulleys. Now, requires a very specific understanding of the image of the time that he's writing in. So he's writing in a time when you might be living in like New York apartments, or an apartment complex, generally speaking. And you would have clotheslines strung between apartment buildings. They'd be close enough together that you could string them across. And they'd be on a pulley system. So you'd put your laundry out in the morning and you'd use the pulley system. I don't know why I'm showing you this. But and your clothes would be out there during the day to flap around and to be dried. So it's a very specific image that helps to know when he wrote the poem. So it's always important to understand when a poem first appeared, because it has something to do with the way we approach reality in poetry. So the eyes open to a cry of pulleys. It's a very literal thing, right? So they've been awakened by the sound of somebody doing their laundry. But a cry seems like a very specific word to me, right? It's an emotional thing. It's also, has this sort of, because I have a child that's 20 months old, right? Like that's how we wake up. We wake up because he cries. You might as well. I don't know how you wake up. It's a weird joke. Spirited from sleep, the astounded soul. So like this is such a loaded line. We don't really know what's going to happen next. The sentence doesn't like give us everything all at once. We have to really watch it develop. But this one is super important. Spirited, right? Sleep, astounded, and soul. I mean, there's all the big words in here matter. Spirited from sleep, to me, like on a literal level, if you have like spirit, you move, you go quickly. You spirit from sleep, you get up fast. So the eyes open, like you're jumped from sleep. But spirit is another word for soul. Not another word necessarily, but like the Holy Spirit, right? This is a very specific kind of term in Judeo-Christianity. I think in like a more Southern culture, maybe talking about like the spirit moves you kind of a thing. It's like the power of the Trinity, and not that they're all not powerful. That's not coming out right, but like basically it just has a sort of movement to it, but it also suggests an essence that goes beyond that. And then the soul here, right? So with the soul, he separates us. The soul hangs for a moment, bodiless and simple as false dawn. So the image is false dawn that we land on. And if you wake up before dawn, you'll see this. And it's worthwhile, but it's the sun not quite over the horizon, but beginning to. And there's I want to say patina, but that's a very specific word. There's like a layer of color in the world at that moment, but it's not dawn. It's the beginning of dawn. It's false dawn. So the whole thing, right? So it's saying the eyes open because somebody's doing their laundry. The soul is spirited from sleep. And when it's spirited, it hangs for a moment out of our body, right? And it's simple as that which isn't even like the actual awakening of the day. So in Wilbur's language here, very, very concentrated sentence to a complicated idea, is saying that when this person in bed is jolted awake, right, in this moment here, in that moment, the soul of this person departs and it hangs out there, right? It's kind of like hangs above the sleeping person and away from the body and in its pure simplicity. And this is a very specific way to think about. So when we're thinking about like research for ideas and reference, this is a really complicated idea that we should think about, which is, or maybe we shouldn't, but we will, which is like, are you a soul? Are you a body? What do we mean by soul? What does that actually suggest? It's a word we use probably all the time, maybe not all the time, but we use it to the point that maybe we haven't thought about its meaning. But it's basically this idea of like the actual essence of you, the very foundation of your deeper self. And in no small way is that important, right? The actual, not the value, that's too capitalistic, but like, the that which is entirely you, the way you understand yourself. And this is separate from your body, he's saying. Like the body doesn't necessarily mean the soul. The soul doesn't mean the body. They're two different entities. So we have a separation here. And then notice immediately after, because form equals content, there's a separation, right? Hangs for a moment, bodiless and simple as false dawn. Separation, there's been a separation here. Now the poem mimics that separation. Outside the open window. So now we look outside. Remember, that's where the laundry is. The morning air is all awash with angels. So we know that it's morning, and that makes sense because people are just waking up, like putting their laundry out. And it's awash with angels, which he's going to explain here about what angels are. But of course, it's this lovely pun, metaphorical pun, because it's all laundry, which means it's all been washed. And so if it's all awash with angels, then it's a lovely little pun there. And then he goes on in the next stanza to describe the angels out there. But the important thing to remember here is that this is all from the perspective of the soul. The soul is looking, not the person necessarily, but the soul in its own sort of separate existence, right? It's distanced existence from the self. And he's going, and then when the soul looks out there, the soul sees angels, but what we see when we look out there, this sorry for all this pop. When we look out, when we as like people who aren't just souls, but people with our daily problems, when we look out there, we see bed sheets and blouses and smocks. Smocks are a kind of apron. But the soul says, no, but those are angels. So you have to imagine, if you haven't ever or have never seen it, laundry on a clothesline. If you've never seen laundry on a clothesline, imagine a flag on a flagpole being caught in a decent wind. It's going to be moving, right? And as it moves in the wind, he is saying in the poem is saying that that's what an angel is. According to the soul, at least, right, sees the world differently than we do in our full human capacity, or maybe our limited human capacity, where we see bed sheets and blouses and smocks. Your soul sees angels moving, and how the wind is in this way, like God, this constantly moving force that makes the laundry actually exist and move without any sort of body in it, but it still moves. There's still presence in there. So that's these opening few sentences. I'll finish this next stanza in the following video. Hopefully, we'll see.